I've sat with many people who've told me the exact point at which they gave up belief in God. And it usually has to do with some awful experience of suffering. And very often they very kindly say to me, I'm sorry if that upsets you, but I just can't believe in God. So I say to them often something like this. All right then, there isn't a God. Suffering is just a brute fact of existence. And indeed, the vast majority of people will suffer. And some of it is out of all proportion to what we would think deserve. So there is no God, and you just have to accept it. So you've removed the intellectual problem by rejecting the existence of God. But please notice that you haven't removed the suffering. It's still there. Please notice also that you've removed all hope. Now, I actually still believe in God. You don't have the problem. You solved it by saying there isn't a God. I still have the problem because I still believe in God. Do you want to know why? And they usually say, we'd love to know why. Let's get to the heart of it. The very heart of the Christian faith is a cross. The claim is, now you may disagree with it, but if you're going to understand this, you must at least try to think along with the claim and see what sense it makes. The claim is that the one who hung on that cross 20 centuries ago is God incarnate. What is God doing on a cross, ladies and gentlemen, on planet Earth? What that tells me, at the very least, is that God has not remained distant from the problem of human suffering, but has himself become part of it. That's point number one. That gives hope, and I've known so many people. It's not a simplistic solution, because what you've got to realize is when it comes to suffering, it is one thing to be a professor of oncology. It is another thing to be a young mother of 30 who's been told she's 3 months to live because she's got terminal cancer. It looks very different from the academic chair to the hospital bed. And we've got to be so sensitive. And I'm aware that in an audience this size, there are many people who are hurting desperately. So I'm going to try to be as sensitive as I can, but it's going to have to be compressed. Is God really like that? That he comes so close to suffering that he himself suffers? Well, if that were the end of the story, of course, but it isn't. The next bit is that Jesus rose from the dead. I believe that as a scientist. I believe it on the basis of the historical evidence to start with, and on the personal evidence to finish with. I haven't time to argue it, but if you want to read what I as a scientist think of the arguments, firstly, for the possibility of miracle, and secondly, for the actuality of the resurrection, may I just refer to my most recent book, Gunning for God, which may appear in Slovenian in the future, where I've tried to answer those questions as a scientist. But let's just come along with me to see what sense it makes. Ladies and gentlemen, there's another thing that bothers me about life. It's the concept of justice and morality. Is there such a thing as justice? I talked to Dawkins about this in public. And he said, well, we ought to work for justice in this world. Of course we did. But ladies and gentlemen, let's be realistic. The vast majority of people who never live will never see justice. They don't get it in this life, and if there's no other life, they'll never get it. It will prove to have been an illusion, the very concept. Is that so? Every fibre in our body cries out that there's something wrong here, because we discover ourselves to be moral beings. The claim is that Christ rose from the dead. He's broken the death barrier. He has potentially abolished death. Death is not the end. that opens up the possibility for hope and ultimate justice. Do you know the early Christian preachers, one of the things they mentioned again and again was that the resurrection of Christ from the dead, literally, was evidence that he'd been appointed to be the final judge. The morality makes sense because there would be an ultimate judgment, but that's here where the final problem comes. How am I going to face that? I can't even keep my own standards, let alone God's standards. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked about other religions here. I have friends in every religion. So let me say something about that. Why am I a Christian and not in one of the other religions? Let me say two things in closing. Number one is this. This debate can get very, unfortunately, heated and disrespectful. So the first thing to realize is the common morality that we experience in all philosophies and religions. I don't know whether you've ever noticed it, but every single philosophy and religion that I've ever researched has got the golden rule. Do unto others as you would be done unto you. Why is that? Well, from a Christian perspective, it's because whether we believe in God or not, we've been created in the image of God as moral beings. So when I look at you, whether you believe in God or not, ladies and gentlemen, I believe you're made in the image of God, and therefore you're of infinite value. So I better be careful what I say about you or to you. That is, my Christian faith gives you an eternal value that's immeasurable. That's number one. It also means that some of my non-Christian friends or friends in other religions can put me to shame by their faith. I can face that and recognize it. Now, do you know what I've discovered? I've discovered that when you admit and face that, people of all religions are very open to talk to you. Because the discussion is not implying that they're morally inferior. And then we will discuss our differences. Let me illustrate one. My Jewish friends believe that Jesus died and never rose. My Muslim friends believe he never died. I believe he both died and rose. Those three views are mutually contradictory. I'm never any difficulty talking about that to my friends out of all those religions. Because I'm not disrespecting them as men and women. And to decide the difference, I know no other way but evidence. My final point is this. What is the major difference? So now I'm going to make an abstraction, but you'll understand it. And it's this. I discover as I look at religions and philosophies that they're basically of two kinds. The first kind is there is a way, there are rules, there are regulations, there are laws to be kept. You try to keep these laws as best you can through life, and there comes at the end an assessment based on your merit. And acceptance depends on your merit. It's like a university in Ljubljani, actually. There's an entrance, you get in, but even the professors, however kind they are, cannot guarantee that you're going to come out with a degree. It depends on your merit. And that means, of course, that if you're in your first year and you say, you know, I'm going to get a first-class honours degree, your friends are going to say you're jolly arrogant. You can't be sure until the final exam. I meet many people who believe God's like that. He's given them some kind of way or plan. They try to do the best they can. They never can be sure that God will accept them because it depends on their merit. Do you understand that? Now here is where Christianity is utterly revolutionary. It does not teach that, although some versions of it appear to. What Christianity teaches is we never do it that way. You cannot earn God's forgiveness. You cannot merit it. But you can receive it as a free gift. That's a wonderful thing. But you know, it stands the light. Let me tell you about my wife again. I'm sorry, but she's wonderful. Suppose I met her, and I met her on day one in Cambridge, and she was 16. I shouldn't have told you that. But there we are. Suppose I said, you know, I would love you to be my wife. Now, of course, I couldn't accept you now. So here it is. Here's a cookbook, and it's full of laws. If you keep all these laws for, let's say, 30 or 40 years and earn enough money to keep me in the way to which I'm accustomed, then I will think about accepting you. Is that okay? Well, I can see the women especially saying how insulting. Wait a minute. That is how many people think about God. I'll keep the rules. I'll try. And maybe you'll accept me. We would never insult a fellow human being by treating them like that. What did I do? Well, I accepted her, and she, for some reason, accepted me right at the beginning. And that was the secret of our relationship. And ladies and gentlemen, I make no apology for this, because it's the biggest thing in my universe by far. And you asked me the question, so it's nothing to do with the topic. The biggest thing in my universe by far is that I have come to know a God through Jesus Christ. He loved me and gave himself for me. And is prepared at the beginning now to accept me. Not because of my merit, but because of his. And because of what he has done. And it's that that sets me free today. That knowledge, that certainty, that I have that relationship, that death itself will not destroy. Ladies and gentlemen, no other religion competes with that. Because no other religion offers me what Jesus does. And therefore I do not count it arrogance to accept from him what is on offer nowhere else. But that's a big topic for another time. And with that I must stop. Thank you very much.